When Anna raised her arms to the sky that golden afternoon, her body trembling with exhaustion and her eyes shining with tears, she knew she had conquered far more than the $2 million. She had tamed not only the untamable stallion Storm, but also her own fears and limitations, proving that true strength lies in the courage to keep going when all seems lost. But to understand how a 32-year-old literature teacher, weakened by her battle with cancer, reached this epic moment in the dusty arena of the Santa Lucia Ranch, we need to go back in time, to the dark days when the diagnosis fell upon her life like a bolt from the blue. 3 months earlier, Anna had discovered breast cancer during a routine exam. The doctor, a middle-aged man with dark glasses and a serious expression, delivered the results with the coldness of a weather reporter. "We need to start treatment immediately," he said, flipping through papers without looking up. "Chemotherapy, then surgery. Insurance covers the basics, but—" Anna knew what came after that but. The basics meant endless queues, generic medications, rushed appointments, and the constant anxiety of knowing that better, more effective, more humane treatments existed, but only for those who could afford them. She returned home that afternoon, carrying not only the weight of the diagnosis, but also the bitter reality that her life would depend on the speed and efficiency of an overwhelmed system. The house where she lived with her mother, Mary, was on the outskirts of a small town in the American South. It was a simple house, with brick walls and a garden where stubborn jasmine plants insisted on blooming even when the earth seemed too dry to sustain any life. On the porch, two rocking chairs bore witness to their end-of-day conversations, when mother and daughter shared their worries and daily small miracles. "My child," Mary said that night, holding Anna's hands in hers, hands calloused from decades of working as a market vendor, "God doesn't give you more than you can handle." Anna smiled, but inside she felt that this burden weighed heavier than her strength. She was a literature teacher at the local high school, earning a modest salary that barely covered basic expenses. How would she pay for private treatment? How would she afford the imported medications that could make the difference between slow recovery and effective cure? The first chemotherapy sessions were a plunge into hell. Anna lost her hair in handfuls, vomited until there was nothing left in her stomach, and felt a weakness that penetrated to the bone. But the worst was seeing the silent despair in her mother's eyes, who sold vegetables at the farmer's market from dawn to dusk to help with the extra treatment costs. It was during one of those difficult mornings, while Anna was lying on the couch trying to regain her strength after a particularly rough session, that the radio brought news that would change her life forever. The announcer, with that upbeat voice typical of morning shows, announced, "And hey folks, have you heard about the Santa Lucia Ranch Challenge? $2 million for whoever can tame the stallion Storm. That's right, 2 million." Anna slowly sat up on the couch. $2 million. It was an amount that represented not only her financial salvation, but the chance of decent treatment, consultations with top specialists, cutting-edge medications. It was the difference between fighting cancer with her hands tied and facing it with all the weapons available. The announcer continued, "The infamous Storm, a black stallion that has already thrown more than 50 experienced cowboys, remains untamed on Colonel Augustus Mendoza's ranch. The prize is open to anyone who accepts the challenge. Just tame the horse and lead him to the corral." That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She stayed on the porch watching the stars, trying to understand why that news had awakened something so profound in her. She had never ridden a horse in her life, knew nothing about horse taming. She was a literature teacher who loved the poems of Emily Dickinson and the metaphors of William Faulkner. How could she even consider facing an animal that had defeated experienced cowboys? But there was something in the story of the untamable stallion that echoed her own struggle. Storm was also fighting to maintain his freedom, his wild essence, his refusal to submit. Anna saw in that a reflection of her own battle against a disease that was trying to dominate her body, steal her strength, break her spirit. "Mom," she said the next day, while Mary prepared the chamomile tea that had become their morning ritual, "I'm going to try to tame that horse." Mary nearly dropped her cup. "Anna, have you lost your mind? Honey, you barely have the strength to get out of bed. How are you going to face an animal like that?" "Because I need to, Mom. It's not just about the money. It's because it's my chance to prove I can still fight, that I'm still capable of something great." Over the next few days, Anna immersed herself in horse taming. She read everything she could find, watched videos online, talked to local cowboys who laughed at her crazy idea. "Professor," said old Joe, a rancher she'd known since childhood, "taming a horse ain't something you learn from a book. It's instinct, it's strength, it's raw courage." "Then teach me," Anna asked. "Teach me the basics." Old Joe looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Girl, you're serious, ain't ya? More serious than anything I've ever been in my life." The lessons began at old Joe's ranch with a gentle mare named Hope. Anna, still weak from chemotherapy, trembled as she climbed into the saddle, but there was a determination in her eyes that impressed the old rancher. She fell, she got up, she fell again. Her delicate hands, accustomed only to holding books and chalk, were raw from gripping the reins. "Taming isn't about dominating the animal," old Joe explained as Anna struggled to maintain her balance. "It's about understanding it, about creating a connection. The horse feels your fear, your anger, your insecurity, but it also feels your courage, your determination." These words echoed in Anna during her chemotherapy sessions. As the medication coursed through her veins, she closed her eyes and imagined herself riding Storm, not as a conqueror, but as someone who understood the animal's struggle for freedom. News that a sick schoolteacher was preparing to face Storm spread through the region like wildfire. Some supported her, admiring her courage. Others considered her a fool, wasting her final moments on an impossible fantasy. Colonel Augustus Mendoza, owner of the Santa Lucia Ranch and the one responsible for the challenge, was a 60-year-old man, wealthy and accustomed to seeing people humiliate themselves to fulfill his whims. When he heard of Anna's intention, he summoned her for a conversation. "Young lady," he said, sitting behind an imposing desk in his office decorated with rodeo trophies, "are you sure about what you're doing? Storm has sent good people to the hospital. And you, well, you don't seem to be in the best of health." Anna looked him straight in the eye. "Colonel, you issued an open challenge to anyone. I am someone. I have the right to try. But think of your family, girl. Doesn't your mother already suffer enough seeing you sick? Do you want her to see you broken by an animal? My mother raised me to be strong. And strength doesn't mean giving up when things get tough." The colonel laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the room. "Strength? You call that strength? A sick woman wanting to play cowgirl?" Anna felt anger rising in her chest, but she took a deep breath. She had learned that true strength sometimes means not reacting to provocation, but showing character through actions. "Colonel, I didn't come here for your approval. I came to let you know I'll be in the arena tomorrow at noon. The challenge is public, and I have the right to participate." That night, Anna barely slept. She wrote in her diary, a practice she had maintained since her diagnosis. "Tomorrow I face not only a horse, but everything it represents. My fears, my limitations, other people's opinions about what I can or cannot do. If this story is being told somewhere, may it serve as inspiration for those who need to believe that it's still possible to surprise the world. And if you also believe in overcoming stories like this, subscribe to the channel to follow more stories that touch the heart and awaken the courage that exists within each of us." On the morning of the challenge, Anna put on the outfit she had carefully chosen. Sturdy jeans, a cotton shirt, boots borrowed from old Joe, and her father's worn leather hat, who had died when she was a child. In her pocket, she carried 2 small pieces of paper on which she had written verses that strengthened her. Courage doesn't reside in the chest, but in the extent of the dream. And he who fights with his heart is never truly defeated. The Santa Lucia ranch was packed. Reporters, onlookers, gamblers, and family members of cowboys who had previously failed crowded around the arena where Storm awaited. The stallion was truly impressive. Black coat like a raven's wing, defined muscles, eyes that blazed with intelligence and defiance. Anna walked to the arena fence amidst murmurs. Some cheered her on, touched by the courage of her attempt. Others placed bets on how long she would last in the saddle. Mary was there, her hands clasped in silent prayer, her face etched with worry and pride. "Last chance to quit, teacher," someone shouted from the crowd. "No one will think you're a coward." Anna stopped before the fence and looked at Storm. The animal watched her too, its nostrils flared, sensing her presence. For a moment, the world seemed to fall silent around them. "I didn't come to play," Anna whispered, more to herself than to the horse. "I came to fight for my right to live." Entering the arena, Anna felt her legs wobble, not only from fear, but from the effects of the medication still coursing through her system. Every step required a conscious effort. But there was something greater than her physical weakness. There was a flame ignited by the need to prove she was still capable of surprising the world. Storm snorted when she approached, a deep sound that vibrated in the air like distant thunder. Other cowboys had tried to approach him with force, with shouts, with displays of authority. Anna chose a different path. "I know how you feel," she said softly, extending her hand slowly. "I'm also fighting to keep my freedom. Everyone wants to tell us what we can or cannot do." The horse recoiled, but something in its posture changed. Perhaps it was the tone of Anna's voice, devoid of aggression. Perhaps it was the absence of fear in her movements, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she had learned to live with it. The first attempt was a disaster. Storm threw her before she could even get a firm grip on the saddle. Anna fell to the red earth, feeling pain radiate throughout her body. The crowd groaned, some shouting for her to give up. But Anna got up, brushed off the dust, and approached again. "It's okay," she said to the horse, ignoring the voices around her. "I understand. You need to test if I'll give up at the first difficulty, but I won't." The second attempt lasted a few seconds longer. The third, almost a minute. With each fall, Anna rose more determined. Her body protested, her strength ebbed, but there was something unbreakable in her spirit that refused to accept defeat. Between attempts, Anna paused to catch her breath. During these moments, she whispered the verses she had written, reminding herself why she was there. It wasn't just for the prize. It wasn't just for the treatment. It was for the dignity of fighting her own battles, of not passively accepting what others said was her destiny. The local community, who had arrived expecting another spectacle of failure, began to transform. Children approached the fence, their eyes brimming with tears, rooting for the short-haired girl who doesn't give up. Women who had faced their own battles recognized something familiar in Anna, the sacred stubbornness of someone who refuses to be broken by circumstances. "I've never seen anything like it," old Joe murmured to Mary. "She doesn't have the physical strength of the others, but she has something they didn't." "She has heart," Mary replied, tears streaming down her face. "My daughter always had a heart bigger than her body." In the 8th round, something began to change. Storm still resisted, still tried to throw her, but his movements lost some of their ferocity. It was as if he was beginning to dance with her instead of fighting against her. "You're tired of fighting alone," Anna said during a pause, stroking the animal's neck. "So am I. How about we fight together?" Colonel Mendoza watched from his porch, visibly irritated. This wasn't the public humiliation he had expected. Anna was transforming his spectacle of domination into something different, a demonstration that true strength comes from places that money and power cannot buy. In the 10th round, Anna managed to stay mounted for almost 5 minutes. Storm still leaped, still tested her determination, but there was a different rhythm to his movements. It was as if he was beginning to dance with her instead of fighting against her. The sun began to dip below the horizon as the 13th round arrived. Anna was exhausted, her body aching, her strength nearly gone. But there was a serenity in her eyes that impressed everyone watching. "This is the last one," she said to Storm, adjusting the cinch with hands that no longer trembled. "Not because I'm going to give up, but because you've already decided, haven't you?" When she mounted this time, Storm remained motionless for a few seconds that seemed like an eternity. Then, slowly, he began to move, not with the violent leaps of the previous attempts, but with a controlled trot that was almost gentle. Anna held the reins firmly, but without excessive force. "Let's live," she whispered in his ear. And then the unthinkable happened. Storm roared, a long whinny that echoed across the ranch. But it wasn't a cry of resistance. It was a cry of liberation. The stallion that no one had been able to tame began to trot gently toward the corral, carrying Anna as if she were a respected partner, not a conqueror. The crowd erupted in shouts and applause, many openly weeping at the extraordinary scene they were witnessing. Anna dismounted before the corral with shaky legs, but her heart overflowing with a joy she hadn't felt in months. She fell to her knees on the red earth, raised her arms to the sky, and felt every cell of her body vibrate with the certainty that she had conquered much more than a prize. Mary ran to hug her, and the two cried together on the hard-packed earth of the arena, surrounded by a crowd applauding not just a victory, but a lesson on what it means to never give up on yourself. Colonel Mendoza approached reluctantly, carrying the $2 million check. His face showed a mixture of irritation and involuntary admiration. "Well," he said, extending the paper, "a deal's a deal. You tamed Storm." Anna took the check, but her eyes were fixed on the horse, which remained calm near the corral, as if it had finally found peace. "Colonel," she said, "I didn't tame Storm. We understood each other. There's a difference." In those simple words was contained all the wisdom Anna had gained during her journey. Not just the months of preparation for the challenge, but the years of fighting against adversity that had shaped her character. News of Anna's victory spread rapidly. Television reporters wanted to interview her. Sponsorship offers poured in. People from all over the country sent messages of admiration and support. But Anna kept her feet on the ground, focused on what really mattered. With the prize money, she could afford the best treatment available. She consulted renowned specialists, had access to cutting-edge medications, received care that made all the difference in her recovery. But more importantly, she had regained something that cancer had tried to steal: her self-confidence, her certainty that she was still capable of great things. 6 months later, Anna was in complete remission. Doctors considered her recovery remarkable, but she knew the real miracle had happened that afternoon at Santa Lucia Ranch, when she proved to herself that there was no challenge too great for a determined heart. With part of the prize money, Anna created the Hope Institute, dedicated to the humane treatment of oncology patients. The institute offered not only medical care, but also emotional support, alternative therapies, and an environment where patients were treated as whole people, not just as diagnoses. "Healing," she used to tell patients, "begins when you refuse to accept that you are only a victim of circumstances. You are the protagonist of your own story." Storm, the stallion who had terrorized dozens of cowboys, became a symbol of the institute. Anna visited him regularly, and the two shared a partnership that surprised everyone. The horse, once a symbol of violent resistance, transformed into an example that even the wildest spirits can find peace when understood instead of dominated. On special afternoons, Anna brought patients from the Institute to meet Storm. Seeing that magnificent animal, once considered untamable, grazing peacefully in the ranch fields, brought hope to people facing their own impossible battles. If she could do it, they said, watching Anna stroke the horse's neck, maybe I can too. Anna and Storm's story became legend in the region, told and retold at farmers markets, town squares, and gatherings. But for Anna, the most important thing wasn't fame or recognition. It was knowing that her struggle had inspired other people who needed to believe that it was still possible to surprise the world. 2 years after the challenge, Anna returned to the classroom as a teacher. But now her literature classes had a different flavor. When she talked about the heroes of great novels, her students saw in her eyes that she knew what she was talking about. When she explained about overcoming adversity and courage in classic works, her voice carried the authority of someone who had lived those experiences firsthand. True literature, she told her students, is not just in books. It's in the life of every person who refuses to accept that their story is already written. Each of you has the potential to be the hero of your own narrative. In one of these classes, a student raised his hand and asked, "Professor, weren't you scared when you faced Storm?" Anna smiled, looking out the window toward the fields where she knew the horse grazed in peace. "I was very scared," she replied, "but I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that something is more important than fear. And when you find that more important thing, be it your life, your dignity, your right to dream, fear becomes just another obstacle to overcome. Today, I understood that true strength doesn't come from muscles or money. It comes from refusing to accept that we are less than our dreams. Each person carries within them a storm waiting to be understood, not dominated. And when we find the courage to face our own wild horses, be it illnesses, fears, limitations, or prejudices, we discover that we are capable of miracles that we ourselves never imagined possible. The wind gently swayed the jasmine on the porch, carrying the fragrance of the flowers that insisted on blooming even when everything seemed impossible. And Anna smiled, knowing that her story, like Storm's, had become living proof that there are no challenges too great for a heart that refuses to give up on itself.